Good afternoon. In this second video, we will be addressing the topic of risk assessment and work permits. My name is Michael Pena, with ID number 142421. So, this afternoon we will be evaluating what risks and work permits are, which is a very critical topic for any technician or specialist working with medium voltage power lines, because the safety of your life and that of your colleagues depends on what we will cover today. Working on primary lines is a huge responsibility. Even a minor mistake, carelessness or lack of planning can have serious and sometimes fatal consequences. Climbing a pole or handling the conductor, we must understand the risks and learn to manage them professionally and effectively. So today we will explore what the basics of risk assessment are and its importance for safety. How to identify electrical and physical hazards before performing any intervention. Practical examples and field anecdotes that teach essential lessons. Tips and reflections to apply immediately in our daily work. Let's always remember something fundamental. Safety is not just a procedure or a formal obligation. It's a commitment to your life and to that of your colleagues and the community that depends on our work. Every action we take, no matter how small it seems, can directly impact everyone's safety. Before starting, take a mental pause and reflect. Every preventive measure, every inspection, every communication is a step that can save lives. That mindset is the foundation of a strong and lasting safety culture. So, let's cover the first point. Basics of risk assessment. Risk assessment is a systematic process aimed at anticipating problems before they occur. It's not just about filling out forms. It's about analyzing every aspect of the work, anticipating potential accidents, establishing preventive measures effectively. Now, the definition of risk. In technical terms, a risk is the combination of the likelihood of a dangerous event occurring and the severity of its consequences. For example, an energized conductor represents a high risk. The probability of contact exists, and the consequences can be fatal. Example 2. A faulty tool may represent a medium risk, with a low chance of failure and moderate consequences, such as a cut or bruise. Remember, never underestimate a risk, even if it seems minor. In electricity, what seems insignificant can turn into a serious accident in seconds. Now, the stages of risk assessment. For the assessment to be effective, there are generally four main stages. A. Hazard identification. This stage involves identifying all the possible hazards before starting work. Some of the main hazards on primary lines include energized or poorly insulated conductors, faulty or unsuitable tools for the task, adverse weather conditions such as rain, humidity, strong winds, uneven, unstable terrain with obstacles, third-party interference, nearby vehicular or pedestrian traffic, The story of a field crew, a pruning team. Started work without checking the proximity of a medium voltage conductor. The branch fell onto the line, causing an electrical arc. Fortunately, there were no casualties, but it could have been fatal. This incident reminds us that identifying hazards is the most important step to prevent an accident. B. Risk analysis. After identifying the hazards, we must assess the likelihood and severity of each one. Likelihood: how probable is an accident to occur? Severity: how serious the outcome would be. Practical example: risk: branch falling on energized line. High likelihood due to dense pruning area and moderate wind. High severity. Since electrical contact can cause serious burns or even death. Action: hold the task until control measures are implemented. C. Risk control. After the analysis, control measures are implemented to reduce the likelihood and severity of the accident. Correct use of protective equipment: dielectric helmet, insulating gloves, harness, dielectric boots, signage and isolation of the work area, lockout and tagging procedures, constant supervision and communication with the entire team. Field story. A work team checks their protective equipment before climbing the pole. They have reported 0 accidents in 3 years. On the other hand, a group that skipped these measures suffered several serious accidents. The difference is discipline and planning. It's not a matter of luck. Literal D. Monitoring and review. Risk never completely disappears. That is why it is necessary to monitor. Review the measures implemented throughout the activity. Check that protective equipment remains in good condition. Adjust signage if the environment changes. Report any unexpected situation to the team. An example would be during pruning. The wind moved a branch. There is an energized conductor. The supervisor stopped the activity immediately, re-evaluated the risks and adjusted the team's position before continuing. This action prevents a serious accident. So, now let's move to another point, which is electrical hazard identification. Electrical risks are the most obvious and dangerous in primary lines. They can be classified into several categories. Direct contact with energized conductors, which can cause severe burns, amputations, and in extreme cases, death. Electrical arcs from proximity. Even without physical contact, intense energy is released. Discharges from grounding faults. A mistake in grounding connection can be fatal. Field story. A worker assumed a conductor was de-energized and touched it. Result: severe burns and several weeks of recovery. Lesson: never assume. Always check with the proper instrument. Let's move to techniques for identifying electrical hazards. Visual inspection. Observe insulators, connections and surroundings. Voltage test. Use calibrated meters before touching any conductor. Review previous incidents. Knowing prior accidents in the area helps anticipate problems and check protective equipment, helmet, gloves, boots and harness must be in perfect condition before starting the task. So, we also need to reflect on some practical tips. Never improvise. Every task must be planned and analyzed. Communicate changes. If the environment changes, inform the team immediately. Always check tools, protective equipment and procedures before starting. Stop the activity if something is unsafe. Life is worth more than any job or deadline. A reflection would be: safety starts with our decision to consciously do the job right from the beginning. Each inspection, each preventive measure, and every communication are steps that save lives. Now let's move on to physical risk points. Physical risks are present in almost all electrical maintenance tasks. They can cause injuries ranging from bruises to serious fractures, or even death. Falls from height. One of the most serious risks is falling from poles, towers, or elevated structures. Statistics show that a large part of serious accidents on primary lines are due to falls. Factors increasing fall risk: unstable ground or terrain, lack of harness inspection, and lifelines, adverse weather conditions such as wind or rain, poor communication with the team. A field incident: a worker with over 10 years' experience climbed a pole without checking the lifeline. A loose branch moved with the wind, causing them to slip, resulting in a wrist fracture and weeks of recovery. Lesson: no experience replaces discipline and safety equipment checks. So, now let's cover bumps and bruises. When working with primary lines, it's common to get hit by tools that fall due to materials being carried at height. Natural obstacles like branches, stones, or logs. Prevention: keep the area organized. Secure tools with carabiners or retention lines. Constantly check the surroundings before and during the operation. Also, a story. During pruning near a line, a worker did not secure his hand saw with a safety rope and it fell, hitting a co-worker's helmet. Result: a big scare, but no injuries, thanks to the helmet. Learning about protective equipment is effective only if used correctly and combined with good practices. Now, there are musculoskeletal injuries. Handling the load of tools. Heavy equipment can cause injuries, sprains, muscle strains, or fractures. Prevention includes correct lifting techniques, weight distribution when carrying tools, active breaks to reduce muscle fatigue. Story: a team had to move a small transformer without the proper pulley equipment. A worker suffered a shoulder sprain trying to lift it incorrectly. The lesson is that physical preparation and the use of mechanical aids are essential. Now, there are also environmental risks. Environmental risks are those caused by the natural environment or conditions, weather-related, and are often underestimated by technicians. Weather conditions: rain and humidity, which increase the risk of electrocution and slipping. Strong wind can move branches, tools, or affect worker stability. Extreme heat causes dehydration, fatigue, and decreased concentration. Extreme cold reduces manual dexterity and can cause hypothermia or frostbite. Field story: in a rural area, a maintenance team began work without considering strong wind. A branch fell on the energized conductor, causing an electric arc. Fortunately, everyone was at a safe distance and the incident was controlled. The lesson: evaluating environmental risks is as important as electrical risks. Then, there are also animals and insects. Outdoor work can expose technicians to dangerous animals, snakes, spiders, aggressive insects or bee swarms. Prevention. Inspect the area before climbing the pole. Keep a first aid kit available. Coordinate quick actions in case of emergency. Field story. A team was working near a wooded area, and a swarm of bees suddenly appeared. The activity was suspended until the risk was controlled. The lesson of stopping activity when facing an unexpected risk is always the right decision. Also, we understand the importance of proper protective equipment and tools. Personal protective equipment is not just a formality, but the last line of defense against accidents. Each piece has its purpose and must be checked before each use. Basic elements of protective equipment. Dielectric helmet with secured chin strap. Verified insulating gloves with current certification. Dielectric boots with slip-resistant soles and no wear. Flame-resistant clothing, preferably level 2 or higher. Harness with double lifelines. Mandatory for work at heights. Safety glasses or face shield. Protects against flying debris and electric arcs. Field story. A worker suffered an electric arc while inspecting a conductor. The helmet and clothing saved him from serious burns. Lesson. Protective equipment works when it is used properly and well maintained. Correct tools. Tools must be designed for electrical work and checked before each shift or use. We must never use damaged or improvised tools. Always ensure the tool is appropriate when working at heights. Story. A technician tried to use a conventional wrench on a high-voltage connection point. The wrench broke, causing a controlled electric arc and resulting in a learned injury, and immediate replacement of all uncertified tools. So, another point would be prior inspection of protective equipment and tools. Before starting any activity, the team must check the helmet, gloves, and boots. Check the harness, lifelines. Inspect tools and measuring devices. Record any anomalies before starting an activity. A faulty piece of equipment is as dangerous as having no equipment at all. Life has no replacement. The tool does have a replacement. So, there are also good stories. A team working in a pit started without checking for dry branches near energized conductors. A branch fell and caused an electric arc. Fortunately, the safety distance and preventive communication prevented injuries. The lesson is that you must always assess the entire environment before working. Another example, during maintenance of a tall pole. A worker ignored the check of his harness, slipped and was left hanging by the lifeline, without serious injuries, but with a good scare. With the lesson learned, every safety step has a clear purpose, which is to save lives. Another example. A work team suffered extreme sun exposure for several hours, without breaks or sufficient hydration. Some workers began to feel dizzy, and the lesson is that active breaks and hydration are preventive safety measures. Not just safety, but also health. So, some practical advice: we must never underestimate physical or environmental risks. They are usually invisible until they happen. Protective equipment is effective only if it is used correctly, maintained, and checked before each activity. Planning and inspecting tools considering weather conditions is as important as checking the power line. To have the activity in case of any risk expected is always a more professional decision. Now, there are human and behavioral risks. Maintaining primary lines is the human factor. It is one of the most important and often underestimated risks. No matter how advanced the tools are, or how complete the protective equipment is, if the worker does not follow procedures, the risk increases. Significantly, overconfidence occurs here. One of the most frequent factors in electrical incidents is overconfidence. Routine and experience can lead to thinking you know everything and skipping critical steps. Not verifying the absence of voltage before intervening. Ignoring prior inspections of the work equipment. Neglecting to give signals or follow established procedures. For example, a technician with more than 15 years of experience decided to open a switch without authorization and without verification, which resulted in a controlled electric arc that could have caused serious injuries. In reflection, experience does not replace discipline. Another point could be fatigue and concentration. Physical and mental tiredness can directly affect safety. Working long hours in extreme weather or under pressure reduces concentration and reaction ability. Prevention, shift planning, active breaks. Balanced reduction of heavy and light tasks. Constant hydration. Proper nutrition history, prolonged pruning work. A technician experienced dizziness and briefly lost coordination while trying to handle a conductor. Fortunately, he was accompanied and there were no serious injuries. Learning, rest, and task planning are critical preventive measures. So, there is also pressure to meet deadlines, and the pressure to achieve goals and timelines can lead to taking dangerous shortcuts. Some examples are not following the full lockout-tagout procedure. Climbing a pole without checking the lanyard or lifeline. Improvising tool handling. A field story. A team was instructed to establish and restore a critical service in record time. Some technicians skipped verifying the lifeline and personal protective equipment, resulting in a minor incident, but a serious warning about the importance of prioritizing safety over speed. Another human factor is distractions. Distractions, even momentary ones, can cause serious accidents. Use of phones or radios without clear communication. Irrelevant conversations while handling tools. Insufficient observation of surroundings during maneuvers. Here is a story. While installing a transformer, a worker got distracted talking on the radio and dropped a tool near a live conductor. The lesson is that full concentration is essential during any ongoing activity. There are also techniques to identify hazards, to minimize human risks. It is fundamental to apply systematic hazard identification techniques, ensuring that every team member can anticipate possible incidents. Pre-inspection includes checking the condition of insulators, poles, connections, and tools, examining the terrain and nearby environment, obstacles, branches, animals, traffic, evaluating weather conditions and exposure to environmental risks. For example, before pruning in an urban area, the supervisor surveyed the line, detecting dry branches that could fall on energized conductors. Measures were taken to secure them and protect the area. Result: accident prevention. Accidents. So, an analysis of previous incidents must be done. Also, knowing the accident or incident history in the area helps anticipate risks. Document every event, causes and consequences, and corrective actions. Share this information with the entire team before starting a task. Implement continuous improvements in procedures. In a rural area, there had been 3 minor accidents due to falling branches on the lines. Thanks to prior analysis, the team installed protective nets and halted work during windy conditions, avoiding serious accidents. Another point that could help is systematic observation during the task. Maintaining constant attention on colleagues and surroundings. Detect signs of fatigue, distraction, or mistakes. Apply immediate corrections or real-time feedback. For example, a colleague noticed another did not properly secure his harness before climbing the pole. The activity was stopped and corrected, preventing a possible accident. Another point would be checklists. Using checklists is a key tool. They ensure no critical step is missed. There is a record of prior inspection of protective equipment, tools, and environment. All this facilitates communication between supervisor and team. An example: before starting pruning in an area with multiple electrical crossings, the supervisor completed the checklist, checked personal protective equipment, verified tools, inspected conductors, assessed weather conditions, resulting in safe and efficient work. So, prior inspections and incident analyses. A prior inspection. Every activity requires a thorough prior inspection. Checking harness, lifeline, gloves, helmet, boots. Inspection of tools and measuring equipment. Review of the environment and weather conditions. Confirmation of communication and signaling protocols. Because during a routine inspection, a supervisor noticed that an ANE safety rope was worn out. It was replaced before starting work, preventing a serious fall risk. Then, incident analysis and lessons learned must also be done. Analyzing incidents, even minor ones, strengthens the safety culture. Identifies the root cause of the event. Evaluates failed preventive measures. Implements corrective actions and updates procedures. Because in a minor incident, a tool fell on a live conductor without causing harm. When analyzing the event, it was found that the retention rope was not properly secured. The choice was immediate. All tools must always be secured. Another point is feedback and continuous improvement. Teams should meet after each activity to discuss observations. Share mistakes and successes. Also, this encourages collective learning. Set improvement commitments for future tasks. In one story, a team implemented feedback meetings after every maintenance shift. In 6 months, minor incidents dropped by 70%, showing that constant communication and analysis are powerful tools for prevention. The human factor is as critical as electrical and physical risks. Focus and discipline. Communication is the best tool to prevent accidents. Pre-inspections, checklists. Incident analysis strengthens the safety culture. No detail should be underestimated. A colleague's life or your own may depend on it. There are also risk matrices. Risk matrices are tools essential for the systematic assessment of primary line maintenance hazards. Their purpose is to prioritize risks, determine which require the most attention, and establish effective preventive measures. The concept of a risk matrix. A risk matrix combines two factors: probability of occurrence, how likely a hazard is to happen, and the severity of the consequence, how serious the outcome would be if it occurred. The intersection of these factors creates a risk priority: high, medium, or low. Practical example: risk. A branch falling on an energized conductor, high probability. Forest area with wind, very high severity due to possible electric contact, critical priority. Immediate action and strict control are required. So, benefits of using risk matrices. They clearly show which hazards are the most dangerous. Allow quick and effective decisions on controls to apply. Facilitate communication between supervisors and teams about critical risks. Are essential for preparing work permits and safety plans. A field story. In an urban area with multiple crossing lines, the risk matrix helped identify which proximity cable risks were critical, while branch fall risks were medium. This allowed resources and control measures to be prioritized, avoiding incidents throughout the day. How to build a risk matrix. Practical steps. List all identified hazards. During the prior inspection, assess the likelihood of each hazard low, medium or high. Assess the severity of each hazard minor. Moderate or severe, combine both factors in the matrix to determine risk priority. Establish control measures. Eliminate, reduce, control or accept the risk. Now, there are work permits. Work permits are formal documents that authorize and control the execution of an activity with specific risk. They are not bureaucratic procedures. They are an essential safety tool. The purpose of work permits is to identify risks and control measures before starting the activity, formalize the authorization and responsibility of each worker and supervisor, also ensure compliance with established rules and procedures, facilitate communication and team coordination. In the field story, a team received a work permit to prune near a transformer. The document indicated risks of electric arc and falling branches. Thanks to the permit review, the team applied specific measures and completed the task without incidents. Now, are there types of work permits? There is the hot work permit for interventions on energized circuits. There is the cold work permit when the line has been de-energized and isolated. There is the height work permit, mandatory for poles, towers or elevated structures. There is the special work permit for activities with environmental risks, chemical or extreme conditions. Practical example: a technician who must prune trees near an energized line. A hot work permit is required, with specific measures such as a minimum distance, full protective equipment and coordination with the substation operator. Now, there are procedures for requesting these permits. The proper procedure ensures that all risks are assessed and controls are established before starting work. One step is planning before requesting the permit. The supervisor and the team must identify the activity and its scope. Carry out a preliminary inspection of the site and its surroundings. Assess electrical and physical risks, as well as environmental and human risks. For example, a supervisor inspected a pruning area and detected dry trees and nearby cables. This information was included in the permit, so that the team can apply specific measures. Then, there is also the matter of preparing the permit, which involves including details about the activity, date, time, and estimated duration, and exact location. It must detail the identified hazards and specific control measures. Indicate the names of those responsible, the technical supervisor and support staff. Define emergency procedures, evacuation routes, and field history, with a work at height permit. Procedures for rescue in case of a fall were included. During the activity, a technician slipped, but the existence of these procedures allowed for a safe rescue, which was not only safe but also quick. Another step would be the review and approval. The permit must be reviewed by the supervisor and approved by the authority. Ensure competency, making sure that the entire team understands it and signs it. Validate that all equipment and tools are available and in good condition. In the field record, a team attempted to start pruning without final approval of the permit. The supervisor stopped the activity and explained the fatal risks they were facing. As a result, the review prevented unnecessary exposure to energized conductors. Now, the activity is being carried out. Strictly apply the measures indicated in the permit. Maintain constant communication with the supervisor and the team. Stop the activity if any deviation from the plan or additional risk is detected. An example is during pruning. In a windy area, the team stopped the activity until conditions were safer. Correctly applying the permit prevented serious accidents. Then, once the activity is completed, any accident or observation must be recorded, preferably in the permit. File the document for future reference or audits. Share the lessons learned with the work team to strengthen the safety culture. An example: during an intervention, a technician detected a defective tool during the activity. It was noted in the permit and immediately replaced, preventing possible accidents in future tasks. Now, regarding work permits. Never start an activity without these permits, even if it seems like a quick inspection. Always check that all personal protective equipment, tools, and procedures are ready before starting. Keep the permit visible and accessible, so the entire team can access it during the activity. Use the permit as a guide, not just as a formal document. It is an active safety tool. Continuously train the team on how to read, interpret, and apply the permits. A work permit is more than just a paper. It is a guarantee that all risks have been assessed. and that there is a clear action plan to mitigate them. Ignoring it puts every team member's life at risk. So, communication is important. Effective communication is one of the pillars, fundamental in primary line work. Every activity, no matter how small it may seem, depends on the clarity of the information transmission between supervisors, technicians, and support staff. The communication. Before each activity, the work plan and permits must be reviewed. Risk matrices with the entire team. Assign specific responsibilities to each member. Who handles tools? Who monitors drivers? Who oversees safety? Clarify communication protocols during the activity. Signals. Hand signals, radio, verbal, history. During a high-altitude maintenance shift, the lack of clear signaling caused 2 technicians to attempt to work in the same section simultaneously. There was a scare, but no one was injured. Lesson: defining responsibilities and protocols before starting to avoid incidents. The communication throughout the entire activity. Maintaining constant contact between supervisors and technicians, reporting any change in conditions, wind, rain. The presence of third parties. Immediately report any minor incident, damage or defective tool or equipment. For example, during pruning in a rural area, a technician noticed that a branch was unstable and could fall onto the line. He reported the situation to the supervisor, who temporarily halted the activity. He reorganized the maneuver, and the result was effective prevention. So, communication also. After the activity, brief feedback meetings to analyze successes, mistakes and improvements, recording observations and lessons learned for future shifts, updating risk matrices and work permits. Based on findings, after a high-altitude maintenance shift, a team shared an error in tool securing. The feedback helped correct procedures and improve safety in subsequent interventions. Now, coordination and teamwork are required. Effective coordination is key to preventing accidents and ensuring efficiency. Each member must know their role and how to interact with others. There are roles and responsibilities. The supervisor checks permits, risk matrices, protective equipment and tools. Technicians carry out tasks following procedures and protocols as well. Assistants secure tools, monitor the environment, oversee safety. For example, during pruning of a critical section, coordination was essential. While one technician handled the saw, another supervised proximity to live wires, and a third controlled the ground safety zone. The result was safe and efficient work. Therefore, joint planning is important. Before starting any activity, review maps, diagrams, and site conditions. Simulate critical maneuvers to anticipate risks. Strategically allocate human and material resources. In a scheduled maintenance of urban lines, joint planning allowed 2 teams to work simultaneously. Without interfering with each other, time was optimized and safety maintained. So, constant supervision is another aspect. Supervision involves controls, support, guidance, and prevention. Observing compliance with procedures, detecting deviations and correcting them in real time. Motivate the team to maintain attention and discipline. During work at height pruning, a supervisor noticed a technician trying to handle tools without using the connected lifeline. Immediate intervention prevented a serious accident. So, there are situations where real cases must also be analyzed. This helps to understand the importance of each procedure and safety measure, right? For example, in a rural area, a worker suffered a mild electric arc by touching a live conductor without authorization. Thanks to protective equipment, he only had minor burns. The lesson is to never assume a line is de-energized without verification. Another case was a fall from height. A technician climbed a pole without properly checking his harness and slipped. But he was suspended safely on the lifeline. The result was just a scare. But no serious injuries. Each piece of protective gear must be inspected before starting work to avoid fatigue and distraction. During pruning on a hot day, one team suffered dizziness and loss of concentration. Some technicians made minor errors handling tools. The lesson is to plan breaks and shifts. This is vital to maintain safety and efficiency. There was another case of poor handling and poor coordination in an urban incident. Two technicians tried to work simultaneously on the same section without coordinating. The result: tools crossed and created a risk of impact. The lesson: coordination and effective communication prevent accidents. So, communication, coordination, and supervision are as important as technical safety measures. Every activity requires planning, responsibility, and continuous attention. Analyze incidents, even minor ones. Strengthens the safety culture and allows continuous improvement. Safety does not depend solely on the supervisor. Every team member is responsible for themselves and others. So, you should follow these tips. Review permits and risk matrices beforehand. Maintain constant communication during and after each activity. Don't assume someone else has noticed and fixed a risk. Use active breaks and rotations to prevent fatigue. Record every incident or finding for future interventions. Or as a reference, promote feedback and collective learning. Every experience adds to the team's safety. Therefore, safety in risk assessment and work permits is an integral process combining hazard identification, careful planning, proper use of personal equipment and tools, communication, coordination, and constant supervision. Learning from past incidents and continuous improvement. By applying these principles, each workday can be completed accident-free, with efficiency and responsibility, ensuring every technician returns home safe and sound. This has been video number 2. See you in the next video.